Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Idea to Value podcast. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn, and I'm thrilled to have with me today Dr. Sahar Yousef. She is a cognitive neuroscientist and one of the youngest business faculty members of the UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. In her 10 plus years of research on Making Superhumans, which I'm very excited to speak about, she's been featured in Forbes, Business Insiders, and sheds light on how to improve focus, memory, and overall human performance in as little as 7 weeks. Dr. Yousef, it's wonderful speaking with you.
So wonderful to speak with you as well. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode. So Dr. Yousef, if you could describe your journey, where you came from and how you got interested in this topic.
Sure, happy to. So taking a trip down memory lane, I actually started off being fascinated by the philosophy of mind. So I actually started off in philosophy as an area of study. And I was always really fascinated by the topic of consciousness. So how human thoughts arise, how beliefs are formed, how these systems of thoughts and mental models are really created and they evolve over time, and what is real and what is not really inside of the human mind. And what was interesting, I think, early on for me at school, I was lucky enough to really be taken under the wing of a faculty member who was a philosopher at the time within the university I studied in at Berkeley. And I remember within a couple of months of working under him, I started, asking a lot more questions and coming up with ideas about consciousness and, what is the mind? What is the brain? All of these different types of questions. And pretty quickly he pulled me aside one day and he was like, you know what, Sahar, you're going to hit a dead end pretty fast with the kind of questions you're asking. You're not going to find the answers sitting, in a dusty old, room with a chalkboard and all of these old books. You're not going to find it, reading Descartes and Kant. You're going to have to get out of here before it's too late and just go and study neuroscience. You're asking questions not about the mind. You're not asking philosophical questions. You're asking questions about the mechanics of how the brain actually works. So I was very lucky to have that kind of mentorship early on. And so very quickly pivoted to cognitive science or cognitive neuroscience and became very quickly fascinated by, specifically in that field, the idea and phenomenon of neuroplasticity. So how the brain actually evolves and changes over time. So what experiences can you give a human being or an individual that can actually adapt their brains to change it, to make it better? So which is where the Becoming Superhuman sort of brand for the lab really rose from. It is a little sci-fi actually, but it's how can we make the most optimized human being? How can we make the most of our biology so that we can, do things like get more done in less time with less stress, or be more creative, whatever it may be, but how do we optimize?
And you and I had a quick chat before we started. You've got some interesting thoughts on what it actually means to be creative and enhance creative performance from a neuroscience perspective. So can you just take us through your thought processes to what exactly is happening in the brain when people are being creative?
Oh, absolutely. So I have I'm going to call it the most simple, basic perspective, which is a biologist perspective on what creativity really is, because we all know creativity really is, there's a hint of magic always. And I can't speak to the magic as a non-creative myself, but as a scientist, I can tell you, I think the science part is actually pretty magical, but that's my bias. The brain works in what are called neural networks. So these are patterns of electrical activation inside of the brain. And in response to certain stimuli, the stimulus can be something external, like an environment, a cup of coffee, looking at a person, looking at a problem, reading something, writing something, or it can be internal. It could be a thought that you're having, really struggling with a problem inside of your own mind. But these are the inputs to create what we call a brain state. That your brain state is the current electrical configuration of your mind at any given moment in time. Now, what's interesting is that when you are really thinking about a problem, you're fully present and concentrated on whatever problem it is that you're trying to solve. You've uploaded and brought to mind all of the pieces of data, all of the details, all of the nuances of this problem, and you're fully focused in on it. When you're sitting in that brain state, it's like an electrical gridlock in the brain. You're really in it. The thing is that you're not going to get something different with that. You're thinking about the problem, but what you need to be in a solution state, not the problem state. So something needs to electrically reconfigure inside of the brain for you to have that aha moment of some sort. So my biggest recommendation to anyone who is interested in enhancing their innovation potential, their creativity, or to just game their brain to have more of those aha moments is to load your brain up with all of the details, immerse yourself in the problem, get in there and get into flow with it so that everything is top of mind, and then walk away. Don't keep hitting your head against the wall trying to solve these problems. Walk away and expose yourself to different types of stimuli in the outside. Go for a walk, take a shower, start cooking something, talk to a friend, do something different, watch a movie, listen to Nicholas's podcast, do whatever, do something different so that you can have a different type of stimulus come in and actually give you a different electrical signal, a different input to add in. So that if you think about it like cooking, like you're like stirring a pot up, you just want to add in more stuff to see if something else comes up. And you keep doing that until you come up with a solution. But really thinking of this, kind of like if you visualize an electrical gridlock, you have to reconfigure it somehow. You got to add in something new so that it reconfigures. And that's when you have those aha moments, which is why so many people have them in the shower or when they're, out for a walk, whatever it may be.
Absolutely. I find there's a lot of research behind taking away focus from the problem that you're trying to solve. And that sort of puts the focus on something else and allows these random new connections to happen in the other parts of the brain, whether it's the default mode network or wherever else it might be. And that's what ends up producing these novel new connections in the network that might be the idea that solves the problem.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely.
Okay. So one other thing that I'm really looking forward to speaking to you about is not just about creativity, it's about improving your performance as well. Because it's one thing to have an idea, but a lot of people then falter when they don't know how to actually execute. And they've got something they want to produce, but there's either no time or they don't know how to actually sort of focus on solving it. What's your sort of insight based on your research about what hurts and what helps people to actually perform better?
Phenomenal question. I mean, this is the bread and butter of my lab, but in order to be productive, I believe that it's actually far easier to not inject something new, but to actually remove the biggest barriers to modern day productivity. And the biggest barriers, according to our research, are truly all of the distractions and interruptions that the human brain experiences on a daily basis. There was a phenomenal set of studies actually out of UC Irvine that actually measured for a modern knowledge worker, on average, how many times are you getting interrupted? Some sort of external interruption, if it's a notification from an email or some sort of message, phone, even when we're back in the office, when everyone is different wherever they are in the world currently, but someone coming by your desk and knock, like, hey, do you have a minute? I've got a quick question. Whatever it may be, how often is it happening? And it has been steadily increasing, where the last study that was done in 2018, it was 90 seconds.
Every 90 seconds.
Every 90 seconds. On average, a knowledge worker gets some sort of distraction or interruption. Now, this is also taking into consideration if you have an open office, of course. If you're back in the office and you see somebody walk by, so they're just sitting there measuring, they're looking at, whatever it may be, a designer, a marketer, an engineer, a salesperson, it doesn't matter what field you're in, they're just measuring how often your mind is going off task. And it's approximately every 90 seconds. And that was in 2018. So I don't even want to know what it's like now. It's probably gotten worse because now everyone's wearing Apple Watches and all of these different wearables. And so the notifications are coming directly onto the body. There's no separation. And the way that I like to describe this would be when you liken the brain state of focus, real focus and productivity, and you liken it to the brain state of sleep, because all of these things are measurable brain states. They're very different from each other, but you can measure it with fMRI technology or EEG technology. They're markedly different from one another, but they are in fact brain states. And the thing about brain states, just like when we're talking about creativity, right? Like that electrical gridlock, it takes a little bit of time, like onboarding time to get into that brain state and time to get out of it. So this is where the concept of flow really kind of comes into the picture here. So imagine you're trying to fall asleep. It's the end of the night. You lay down in bed. You've done your evening routine. You're all washed up. And you're trying to slowly fall asleep into slumber. And every 90 seconds, I come by and I flick you on the forehead. Right? I mean, how difficult would it be to actually get into the brain state of sleep? Nearly impossible, but we're doing the same thing when we're working. We say that we don't have time. We say that it's too difficult to concentrate, that we feel distracted, that we're all over the place. I mean, the word that I hate the most, I think, about our generation is the B word, busy. Everyone is busy all of the time. But the number one thing I always recommend is you got to get out of that state. You have to turn all of these things off. Yeah.
I saw some other interesting research. I'm not sure if it was done by Microsoft, but they're often credited as being part of it, that once you are distracted, it takes a set number of minutes to get back into the focus and the performance level that you were at beforehand. And I don't know exactly how many minutes it was, but it was somewhere around 20 minutes. Is that sort of in line with what your research is finding as well?
Some of the seminal studies on what's called task switching, which, by the way, because multitasking, by the way, is a myth. The human brain cannot do that. You cannot actually multitask. And the way that we define it, I should say, you have 100% brain capacity. If you want to do 50% on your inbox and 50% on what you're trying to actually, create in the world and actually focus in on, fine, you're 50-50. Right? You're half-assing your job, whatever it is that you want to focus in on, but you're not at 100%. So we only have the 100 to deal with at any given moment. So the multitasking bit that folks really kind of are still struggling with sometimes is that we might be under the impression still as a society and as a generation that it's possible to be 100% on one thing and 100% on another. And that's a complete myth. Now, there were a set of studies, seminal studies, that were done on what's called task switching. So not multitasking, but switching between things rapidly, which is what we actually do. And those studies did, in fact, yes, approximate it to around 20%. There's been other studies that have been lower. There's been one other study that's been even higher. The point is, I mean, I love that you're so familiar with this research. The point is there's a cost. So every time you switch, you're paying for it somehow. You're paying for it physiologically, in energy, but you're also paying for it in time. It's just going to take you so much longer to get the same amount of work done.
Well, if you're being distracted every 90 seconds and it takes you 20 minutes to get back on track, and there's another 90 seconds before the next distraction, that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of people get to the end of a workday and feel like they haven't actually accomplished that much.
Absolutely. I hear this all of the time. It's like, oh, I've been so busy all day. I did all of these things. I've been running around, but I just don't feel like I made progress on my priorities. I didn't make progress on what was important to me. So now it's the evening. And now that I don't have the meetings and the calls and the emails coming in, now I'm finally going to sit down and actually get some work done, which I think is the most heartbreaking thing, because when are you supposed to live your life? When are you supposed to have those creative insight moments if you're just running around all day?
So let's say we want to fix these problems. I assume one of the things would be to minimize notifications and distractions. What can people do to actually accomplish that? And are there any other tips you've gleaned on how to improve your focus, your memory, and your overall ability to get that work done?
I would say the highest ROI, highest return productivity method that I could really impart and teach anyone in a short period of time would be something that's called a focus sprint. And this was something that was developed in our lab. A focus sprint is a methodology of work. So it's how you actually work. And there are a few simple steps. Each step is going to sound very, very, very dead simple. But when they're all done in conjunction, this is truly, I would say, the heart and soul of what it is to work in line with your biology instead of against it. You're trying to leverage the way that naturally the brain and the body work best so that you can, in fact, be more focused, have more energy, and get more done. And I'll briefly describe a focus sprint to you now. But a focus sprint, again, it's customizable. If you want to do it for 15 minutes, that's fine. If you want to do it for an hour, which is what I typically recommend, also great. You can do it for 2 hours if you like, if you feel like you have that kind of attention span. But it is, in fact, a methodology of work. And the first step is actually to set aside a block of time in the calendar, especially if you work with a team that can see your calendar. Because what you're really doing is you're giving yourself permission to not be hyper responsive. They can see it in the calendar. Hey, I'm doing a focus sprint. This is what I'm experimenting with. I'm blocking off hour-long chunks in my calendar so I can do my most important work. So I can do this creative work. I can do the heaviest lift tasks on the priority list for the entire company, the team, etc. You put it in the calendar and you communicate about it so that you're not anxious about not checking the inbox. So that's step number one. The second step is actually to write out in very clear terms what you aim to accomplish. Actually scope it out. So take a piece of paper out and say, what is the work product? What is the work outcome for the end of this hour? What am I actually going to have to show for the end of the hour? Because the biggest mistake I have noticed that high performers or high achievers make when they're sitting down to actually get work done is that they are vague and then they overestimate how much they can do. So if their afternoon is opened up and they have no more meetings, no more responsibilities, and they're like, oh, wonderful. Finally, I can get a lot of important work done. Well, my question to you is, when is work done? Work is never really done. It's a conveyor belt. As you're actively getting it done, more things are coming down the pipeline. So because work is never really done, in fact, you can't really ever get that hit of dopamine, that positive feeling that keeps you motivated, keeps you energized, and honestly keeps you addicted to your own productivity and your own success. You need to be able to have that hit of dopamine at the end of a work session. But the only way to do that is to get very, very specific about what it is that you're actually going to accomplish. So I recommend get a piece of paper out, old-fashioned style, write out exactly what you aim to accomplish and time block it. Say the first 10 minutes of the hour, I'm going to do X. Then I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing Y. Then I'm going to spend 5 minutes doing Z. All of these are broken out as tiny subtasks as you can, so that at the very end, you can kind of go back and cross them all off in a very efficient order. And then the third step is truly the one, we were talking about before, Nicholas. You have to set up your environment for success. I call this digital hygiene, digital and environmental hygiene. Notifications off. Your phone is out of sight, out of mind. You have your headphones plugged in and maybe some either white noise playing or music in a language you don't understand, so that's not background draining your cognitive resources. You have to make sure that you're uninterruptible, at least for the next hour, however long your focus sprint is. And then to actually use a timer. So humans, and actually most mammals, are actually susceptible to what are called markers of progress. So if we see kind of time ticking away, or a progress bar of some sort, many studies have been able to show that we actually work more efficiently, so much more, much faster than we would otherwise. So use a timer if you've never done that before. And the last step is to take a break, because when you sprint, because it's called a focus sprint, it's not a focus walk, it's a sprint. You're really being intentional about what it is you aim to accomplish. No excuses. Everything is put away. No more notifications, no interruptions. What do you aim to accomplish? Let's set a timer. Let's get serious about it. Break it down, and then give yourself the reward of a break at the very end, so that you can actually physiologically remake what are called glucocorticoids. These are stress hormones in the body, like adrenaline and cortisol. You need these things to be alert and focused, and you use them up when you're focused. So you need an opportunity to make them again by taking a break.
It's been wonderful speaking with you. I always like getting insights which are actually based on science. And if people want to find out more about you, your scientific sort of research, and the work that you do, what's the best place they can go to find out more?
Well, you can visit myself and my entire lab at becomingsuperhuman.org. That's probably the easiest place to find us. And to find me, sahar@yousef.com, or my email, which I'm happy to provide for you to post in the show notes for sure.
Perfect. I'll make sure to get all of those links down in the description below. Dr. Yousef, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking with you, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Nicholas.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe, and leave me a comment about what you thought and what you'd like to see more about. If you want to take your creativity and innovation capabilities to the next level, then invest in yourself with the premium training only available at ideatovalue.com. These exclusive training modules have all been put together by me, Nick Skillicorn, and have been used by thousands of artists, innovation leaders, and CEOs to become better at understanding the source of their creativity and executing on their innovation ambitions. And there is no risk to you, as they are backed by our money-back guarantee. Now, don't forget to go out there and make your ideas a reality. See you again soon.